to Scotland for the grouse shooting and doesn't mention whose estate she's visiting, so we can't contact her. Typical. Lady Rotherton is predictably unpredictable, Geoffrey said. The corners of his mouth turned up in a wry smile. He'd realized very soon after meeting her that there was no defense against Prudence's very British and formally American aunt. Much simpler to go along with whatever scheme she dreamed up and hope her attention would be diverted before too much damage had been done. At least there's still an ocean between you again. I think she convinced herself I'd sail back to England with her last spring. Even when she was pushing hard for it, I couldn't envision you stepping into the arms of a chinless English aristocrat with empty pockets, a mouldering London townhouse, and a country estate with nothing to recommend it but the scenery. He shook his head and then chuckled. On second thought, Prudence, you might want to reconsider. You'd wear a tiara and a title very nicely. I'm going to pretend you didn't say that. Prudence had paid little heed to the bantering that had always marked their relationship and occasionally took on a sharp, quarrelsome edge, until Geoffrey was seriously wounded on a train, very like the one they were riding in today. The tension that had once reverberated between them like a taut violin string no longer tightened her jaw and etched frown lines across her forehead. She drew away from the brink of a quarrel now, mindful of words that could not be taken back, invisible injuries that were harder to heal than bullet wounds and broken bones. Geoffrey had almost died. Prudence nearly lost him, and that had made all the difference. Edging her way cautiously toward a commitment she had been loath to take, Prudence was almost ready to let down her defenses. The verbal swordplay had lost much of its bite. But not always, and not entirely. Be discreet. I wonder what Aunt Jillian means by that, Prudence mused. We're going to have to ask questions to find this mysterious friend of hers. At least we know she lives on the Canadian side of the falls. If Ernestine Hamilton is embroiled in a land dispute in American Niagara, she may not want it known that 2 New York City lawyers have entered the fray. I think of us less as lawyers than private inquiry agents, don't you? Hunter and Mackenzie Investigative Law. We've created something new, Geoffrey said. While the courtroom had always remained a possibility, most of the cases they'd accepted in the past 2.5 years had been more investigatory than legal. He had thought that might change after Prudence became only the second woman to be admitted to the practice of law in New York State, but the client she had been hoping for had not materialized. Despite their best efforts, they hadn't been able to quash rumors of the case that had taken them into the squalid streets of Five Points and the sordid world of sexual slavery. The notoriety of what they had discovered repelled a conservative clientele averse to newsworthy impropriety. For better or worse, private inquiry agents were often tarred with the same brush as the beleaguered individuals who hired them. You'll never be able to walk away from your Pinkerton years, Prudence said. She'd grown adept at interpreting the expression on Geoffrey's face and reading his thoughts. I no longer want to, now that I've come to terms with them. He had accepted the fact that there would always be cases he could never discuss with anyone, incidents that tortured his conscience, nightmares against which there seemed to be no defense. He was counting on the passage of time to dull the memories, and hoping to spare Prudence the worst of what it meant to battle crime and exploitation. We'll check into the Clifton House, order tea, and see what the waiter or the desk clerk can tell us about our client, Prudence decided. Discreetly, of course. When she smiled, her light gray eyes sparkled, and her face radiated a compelling beauty. Josiah claims it's the finest hotel in Canadian Niagara. He would know, Prudence agreed. Someday their secretary would leave them to pursue his own interests, but not for the foreseeable future, she hoped. Josiah Gregory was as intrinsically important to the smooth function of their fledgling enterprise as either of the two principals. On more than one occasion, he'd proven to be a valuable operative, as well as a skilled practitioner of shorthand and a master at keeping complete and orderly files. For this case, he'd bought the train tickets, made the hotel reservations, and secured the travel guide Prudence had been reading during the long ride from New York City. The one thing Prudence hadn't thought to ask him to do was uncover who Ernestine Hamilton